Hi everyone, this is Big Sister Abbey.
And Little Sister Shannon.
So, technology hates me, which is a constant theme of my life.
I like to say that she has reverse tech romancy.
Yes, and we've troubleshooted most of it up to now. And so even with my really good mic, there was some weird problem glitch this time, and my side of the audio didn't work very well.
Yeah, so if it sounds like Abby is recording from the bottom of a well, full of candy wrappers, it was all audio problems. I fixed it as much as I could, but there's still some issues.
Yeah, we thought about recording it again, but the first recording we thought was just so good, and we couldn't really recapture it. We decided to go ahead and give you kind of the bad audio, as opposed to trying to redo it and giving you better audio. But hopefully,
bad audio, but genuine emotions.
Yeah, instead of like good audio with pretend emotion. But still, hope you enjoy it. It's a really interesting podcast, I think. Yeah.
It was really good, so we hope you enjoy it. It's called The Sun Stands Still. Here it is.
Hey, I'm Abby.
And I'm Shannon.
And we're sisters.
My big sister Abby has a Master's of Divinity from Earlham School of Religion and has been telling me Bible stories for probably 15 years.
And my little sister Shannon has seen 13 versions of Jesus Christ Superstar and has read parts of the Sermon on the Mount. Together, we're bringing you fun facts, historical context, and Bible stories.
Well, Bible stories according to you.
No, according to you.
According to you!
This is the Bible.
According to my sister. Hi, Abby.
Hi, Shannon.
How's it going?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm awesome. I don't know. I've been chilling lately. I've been watching a bunch of movies.
What movies?
Well, my friends went to go see, the Oscars are coming out, so they went to see some of the famous Oscar films that are, like the ones that have been nominated for Academy Awards. And they make me crazy for days, but they did take me to go see the, what's the singing and dancing film with,
La La Land?
No, the one with Wolverine in it. It's still in theaters. The Greatest Showman on Earth.
Did you see they went on James Corden's late night show and they did like the Walkway musical?
No, what's that?
It's this goofy thing James Corden does where he takes like famous people and they do a Broadway musical during the walk sign on Lizzie Rose.
I think you've told me about this before. I didn't know they did it with this one though.
It's really weird, but Hugh Jackman and Zac Efron and the actress's name who I didn't recognize.
Zendaya.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
They all went out and were doing like famous numbers during the walkway. So it's totally worth watching. Yay! So, Hugh Jackman was really funny and was a star, and Zac Efron was just, I have no idea what's going on. And he's like riding on a tricycle at one point, just like, I don't know what I'm doing. It was kind of
That's perfect.
funny and worth watching, actually.
I'm gonna check it out. It was a cute movie. It does that thing that musicals do where I'm like, I don't know what's going on, but the music is good. It was really fun. It was so uplifting, but I went with my two friends, and one friend is on one side telling me all like the best parts because she's seen it before, and my other friend is on the other side telling me that everyone dies. It was a slice mix, and like nobody dies, but he was just trying to bring me down, like pick on me. So it was like this bounce back and forth between the two of them giving commentary the whole time.
Real supportive friends there.
Yes, I know. It was fun. So I've seen a bunch of movies lately, which actually I think has something to do with the story you brought this week.
Yeah, relatively.
So, wait, should we mosey over to the Bible story corner?
Let's do that.
Okay, so it does have something to do with this, because...
Do you know the quote?
I do. I do know the quote, because there's this quote from A Knight's Tale, which came out in like the early 2000s. So it's a movie based...
It's a weird movie. It's a really
Tale?
silly, goofy, maybe in the early 2000s, kind of explaining the missed months of Chaucer's life.
Maybe.
And
Who
why
knows?
he
Whatever.
wrote the Canterbury Tales. But that's like a side note. It's about someone in the Middle Ages trying to be a knight. And it's like goofy movie, but our family
It's
loves
an
it.
incredibly goofy movie, and we loved it, and we watched it over Christmas. And there's this moment in the movie where the main character, who's played by Heath Ledger, looks at the leading lady and goes, "You remind me of the Bible."
In trying to romance her.
Yeah, and she's like, "What?" And he goes, "Well, when God stopped the sun to give Joshua time to defeat the Amorites."
I believe that's what he says.
Yeah, that's what he said in the movie, and it was very dramatic and romantic. But Abby comes back to me like a couple weeks ago. "Let's do that Bible story. Let's do the one from A Knight's Tale." And so we were like, "Yeah, cool. God stopped the sun. That's awesome."
Yeah, and
That'll be fun.
I was also remembering, I remember vaguely reading the story as a kid in one of our colorful Bible books, and it'll be good. I mean, it's in this book of Joshua, which has a lot of battles, and it's about a battle, but probably not a big deal. We can talk about war in the Bible a little bit, but not a lot. And then I sat down and reread it and realized that this story is sort of the entryway into the genocide in the book of Joshua. So
I get a text, and Abby says, "genocide." And I'm like, well, there goes the fun-loving atmosphere of this podcast.
Yeah, so saying that there is a little bit more serious tone to some of the conversation about this book.
It's not a love story, apparently.
It is not a love story.
When you're trying to woo somebody, maybe use a different Bible moment.
And on that serious tone, I mean, we're laughing because we weren't expecting to have to talk about genocide right now. So some of the laughter is more like oh no, gosh, what are we gonna do with this? It's not laughing about genocide.
That's horrible.
It's about how did we get into this situation. So, saying that there's nothing gruesome that I'm going to talk about, just know that that's one of the themes that's going to arise if I guess you have issues with that. So, saying all that, this is the story of the sun stopping, or as I think I also called it, the Israelite conquest, Canaanite genocide.
Bible story time!
So this story starts with the Israelites. They've escaped Egypt and they've wandered in the desert for 40 years, and now they are finally in Canaan, which is the promised land they've been waiting for a long time. And at this point, they've sort of settled in the central part of Canaan, divided the land up, and everyone's kind of getting settled, but they are still conquering places. And
So there are other locations in the area where there are other people who aren't necessarily the Israelites.
correct. Yeah, there's still a lot of city-states all over the place in this area. And one of those places is called Gibeon, with the Gibeonites. And right before the story starts, the Gibeonites have established essentially a peace treaty with the Israelites so that they won't get conquered, and kind of just incorporated it into the Israelite land and the Israelite people. But this kind of makes some of the other city-states really upset, particularly the king of Jerusalem. And side note, this is the first time Jerusalem is mentioned at all in the Bible.
Okay.
So the king of Jerusalem.
And Jerusalem right now isn't part of Israel.
No, it's its own separate city, a little kingdom area, probably an important city, but not one that's necessarily important to the Israelites at this point because it belongs to the Canaanites.
Okay.
So the king of Jerusalem sends out a message to 4 other kingdoms or city-states in the area and says, the Gibeonites have betrayed us by going and joining the Israelites, or at least making a peace treaty. Why don't we combine our forces and go attack them as kind of retribution so that other city-states won't do that? Which brings us up to where the story really begins, with the coalition of 5 different kingdoms or city-states going to attack the Gibeonites.
Well, try to attack the Gibeonites. That's kind of like a warning to others, maybe, to not side with Israel. Yeah. So the Gibeonites don't like being attacked, so they send to the Israelites, and specifically their leader Joshua, saying, "We're being attacked. Remember, we're allies now. Come help us, protect us." And so Joshua says, "Okay, let's go and save these people." And so all the Israelites marched overnight. Was probably miles. Estimates note it could have been 10 hours. It could have been a day or two, but a really long march overnight. And God kind kind of inserts themselves here. He says, don't worry, I'm with you. And so between God allowing it to happen and Joshua being a good strategist, they surprise this army, the attacking army.
Okay.
And they start scattering, and they're killing in its battle and so on and so forth. But Joshua's army and the Israelites are beating back the allied forces that are attacking the Gibeonites, which is when this really weird 2-sentence thing pops in of Joshua praising the Lord for stopping the sun and making things happen. It seems to be like an ancient form of poetry. And then there's a line that says, because isn't that how it's written in some other ancient text? The sun stopped and God made it so. And then it gets back to the story.
So just it pauses for a moment. Let me tell you about this poem that happened.
About the sun stopping in the sky, and back to the story.
And that short, brief moment was referencing something, another piece of writing, like a prophecy or something about this moment?
I don't know. It's just obviously an ancient text. But it's like it looks like a poetry kind of form, so it's a poetry or a song. It's this weird, like, 2 sentence thing just saying that the sun stopped in the sky and the Lord made it happen. And really people aren't quite sure what to do with that. Like, is it an omen? Is it God doing something? Is it a metaphor? It's this weird insert into the story.
It's this moment.
Yeah. So then we get back into what's going on. And the Allied army is running away. And God starts throwing hail at them from the sky.
Of course.
Killing a whole bunch more, but none of the Israelites. But the Israelites start chasing them up this hill after the hailstorm. And the 5 kings go hide in a cave. And so Joshua says, go put boulder over that cave. So the Israelite army puts boulders over that cave, blocking the 5 kings in. Then they go and attack the rest of the common soldiers, kill most of them. Some of them are able to escape back to their hometowns or fortified cities. At which point Joshua is like, yay! They turn around, they go back to the cave where the 5 kings are. They take the boulder down, they pull out the 5 kings, try to humiliate them some, say stand on their neck, whether that's literally or figuratively. They kind of show that they're dominant. Joshua executes them, hangs them off trees or poles, it's hard to say, for the rest of the day. At the end of the night, pulls them down, throws them back in the cave, and they bury the cave back up.
This is this is definitely a war story.
Yeah.
Within the Bible, conquest and taking over.
Yeah, and that's the main part of the story narrative, and the next, some verses is just really a list of all the cities, mostly in the southern part of what becomes Israel, being attacked and conquered. So it's pretty much just a list of cities being conquered by the Israelites, which means a lot of killing of warriors and women and children. And
so this is the kickoff of another conquest.
Yeah, so this is really setting the stage for the next chapter and a half, which is really just a list of Joshua and his army going around and conquering all of the cities in this area and demolishing them.
Wow. That took a turn for the worst.
That did take a turn for the worst. So the story itself doesn't really give gruesome details. Other parts of the story say that God told them, don't take any survivors, destroy these cities. So one supposes that's really what they did. At the end of the chapter kind of says, and Joshua fulfilled God's word, and these places were totally taken over and things like that.
So we know this is a story in the Bible, but not everything is necessarily in the right order in the Bible. Well, I guess not in the right order in the Bible wasn't necessarily told at the right time about something that's historically accurate. Is this a Bible story that we think might be historically accurate?
No.
No, okay.
So, many of the places, well, just first off, this text actually itself has lots of contradictions. Okay. So, some of the towns that are listed as being conquered later in the chapter weren't some of the cities that were initially attacking the Gibeonites. So why were they spared when it said earlier that they were killed? And there's just those sorts of contradictions. So when archaeologists go and look, they're like, well, yes, so this one town was destroyed. And about 150 years later, this other town was destroyed. And about maybe 100 years after that, this town was destroyed. So all the towns that are mentioned, yeah, they were destroyed, but they were destroyed so far away from each other in timelines that obviously wasn't by the same army. And even Joshua, the book of Joshua, mentions that he still had to fight some of these armies later and things like that. So
Yeah, so Joshua didn't do a full sweep of the area and suddenly everything
Yeah.
was Israel.
yeah, so historically accurate, no. An interesting side note of how archaeologists think Israel came about. So they think the Israelites were more like the poor people in the land of Canaan because there was a lot of inequality at that time. And so they think a lot of the poor people escaped out into the countryside and then lived there and maybe eventually started coming together. Perhaps some people who had escaped Egypt came and settled there and they heard some of those stories and they meshed a lot of their different cultures and societies and histories together into kind of what created the Bible. But eventually they came together and started to slowly destroy the upper class parts of Canaan.
Who lived in the cities.
Who lived in the cities and were oppressing them because afterwards those cities or towns that were created were a little bit more equal, and the God in the Bible is much more about social justice and taking care of people.
Oh my gosh. Can that story be in the Bible?
It'd be so much more cool, right?
Yeah.
And they don't there's no story or historical accurate thing that says this is exactly what happened, but archaeologists putting pieces together, they think that's at least a worthwhile theory.
It's a worthwhile theory, yeah. That's really cool.
Yeah, personally, I think that's a much more interesting story than the conquest. So what do we do with this story, right?
That's what I'm wondering, because, yeah, we did the whole story, so what are different ways we can look at this, or what do we do with it?
Yeah, so I kind of thought there are 4 different ways one can kind of really think about this story. The first is looking at it as a holy war, a God-ordained holy war to go and kill a whole bunch of people, which, let's be honest, the Pilgrims and many of the early settlers to what's now the United States and the Americas, that's how they read the book of Joshua. That's how they saw their experience. They saw themselves as the new Israelites, the new land, and all the native people here in the United States as Canaanites. So all of the war that they perpetuated on Native Americans, they saw as being a holy war. The plagues that happened to the Native Americans were God's will, just like God willed the hailstorm and the omen in the sky and things like that. So there's definitely that strain in Christianity.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
That's rough. That's a rough thing to swallow.
That is a really rough thing to swallow. Another way of looking at it that at least one very well-known ancient theologian named Origen read that story is he read it kind of in a similar way of what I understand Muslims view jihad as, an internal holy war of the Canaanites represent sin inside of yourself, or I think he actually used the word devils or demons, but inner things you're struggling with, and you need to be like Joshua and the Israelites and purging those and destroying them so you can be a better person.
So this is a metaphor.
Yeah, so he read it as we should interpret it now as a form of a metaphor and not as a purpose to go and kill other people in the name of God. Yeah, another way of thinking about it, I guess, is to think about it in terms of and this even hurts to say a little bit, but it's a story of God fulfilling God's promises. So God had promised this land to people, and this is the narrative of those people finally getting their land. God supporting them, God protecting them, and fulfilling God's promise. So theologically, it can be thought of as evidence of God fulfilling a promise and being true to people and being on their side in terrible times and supporting them.
Yeah.
So that's another way of thinking of it theologically.
So is this a fulfillment of a prophecy that we heard about earlier in the Bible? Of the creation of the land of...
Yeah, God promised this land to the descendants of Abraham who became the Israelites.
Gotcha.
And then, the rest of the Bible up to this point had been the story of how they got to that land and how they took it over. So the fact that they're finally there and God's supporting them, it can be seen as this really powerful thing of God is on our side, God is protecting us.
Yeah.
That's a possibility.
It is.
Some other ways we could think about it. One is kind of a mix of two things, I guess, in my head.
So there are experiences in my seminary days, particularly when we were going to Germany.
For a class. And the Germans, because of the Holocaust and because of the horrors that came out of that, they are forced to acknowledge their history, and so that they won't repeat it, and that they can essentially hold other people accountable to their own atrocities. But they've had to face continually, and as a nation, they have also agreed to face continually the horrors that they have done.
Right.
And then I combine that with what my Old Testament professor talked about when we got to the book of Joshua, because Quakers are historically a peace church. And so most of the people who go to a Quaker seminary are people who lean a little bit more towards pacifism or nonviolence or hatred of the book of Joshua, because it's all about, God condoned and wars and things like that. So the professor opening up said, so perhaps this book can be read right now in the text of acknowledging the history of our flaws and what things in the name of God have caused, and recognizing that pain. And embracing it as part of our narrative.
Yeah.
And can be a way of remembering never again, and we've grown beyond this, and instead of trying to ignore that it's in there.
Because that's what we want to do. We want to stick our fingers in our ear and be like, there was never war in the Bible. We just want to turn our swords into plowshares and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. God's loving and gracious and would never do that. And here's a book that says God helped in war and holy war. And so maybe we can now read it as acknowledgement of the badness that comes along with religion and one-thought mentalities, and it's acknowledging the bad side of things we have done. So in a way of holding ourselves accountable so that we don't let things like that happen again.
Yeah.
Which I think is the way I tend to go most often, of going, I hate this. And we can't hide from the things we have done as a religion, or we have done as a people, or humans have done to each other. Here's a text about.
I'm not surprised. You're very good about struggling in the gray area of things. So I really like that way of looking at it too, because it feels honest and it feels true.
Yeah.
As opposed to ignoring it or trying to sweeten it in some way. It's like, this is ugly, and this is a way to look at it so that we learn something from it and we change and get better.
Yeah. So let's not make religion easy.
Yeah. Is there another way to look at it?
Yeah, so the last way I thought of looking about it is something called process theology, which is very complicated.
Okay.
I've only studied it just a tiny little bit, but in essence, what process theology says is maybe God isn't a static being. Maybe God is learning as God goes along. And perhaps God learns from humans.
This is some robot sci-fi stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's actually legitimate theology out there, which is actually becoming more and more popular. But it's saying God...
that's fascinating.
God is learning, and God is learning alongside of us, and we teach God, and God teaches us. And so that means
this is gonna
perhaps
hurt my
the God
brain
of the
for a
Old
really long
Testament had to go through a phase of learning about war and learning the horrors of war.
Okay.
And has now processed or progressed into a place where God isn't as big of a fan of war and is now trying to teach us love from learning from us about the horrors of war.
Oh my gosh. Interesting.
Yeah, so that's another way of thinking about it. Is well, maybe God had to learn something there, and God later went, you know what? Maybe this whole holy war thing is not such a good idea.
Yeah.
Because the God in the New Testament is much more about love and acceptance and less about the holy war kind of thing. Even in the book of Revelation, it's much more, I would argue, symbolic, and many of the messages.
It's much more a story of love and God loving people.
So one can kind of see a progression of thought, whether that's from God or whether that's from humans and Christians. I mean, that's, who knows? But that's maybe something that process theology could bring to that conversation.
This has been really cool. I feel like we started out with this story like, this is a silly story that showed up in this comedy we both really like, and then it was like, oh, this is going to be really dark. And yet, even if it's something in the Bible that's really dark, we've come to this place where we're able to look at it in lots of different ways and still end with learning something or end with some kind of hope, you know?
Yeah. Yes. That was hopefully what I was going for.
Like something
it's a terrible thing. Genocide is a terrible thing, but what can we take?
Because it's in the Bible and it's part of Christianity now, so let's do something with it. Let's struggle with it and talk about it.
Yes, exactly.
That's really cool. Are there any last thoughts you're thinking about for this particular Bible story?
I don't think so. There were some like tiny little things here and there, but I don't think any of them were really fleshed out well enough to bring. I don't think there's anything else, so I want to go to the silly stuff with Shannon.
Silly stuff with Shannon? Yay! Abby.
Yes.
I'm going to tell you something and you're going to be very proud of me. And then I'm going to tell you something else and you're going to be significantly less proud of me.
Okay. Go for it.
So we're doing this Bible podcast and I thought to myself, well, why don't I, buy another Bible, right? Because the last Bible I have is like the Teen Adventure Bible that I got from like my 10th birthday or something. Do you know where this is going? I bought a Bible.
Which I'm happy about, but I'm scared. No!
I showed her a picture of it. We're on Skype so she could see me. I showed her a picture of my brand new Bible. It's a unique translation. Not well known. It's the Lolcat Bible.
And it hurts my soul so much.
Abby really doesn't like lolcats.
For so many reasons.
So now we have to go through the whole history of it. Okay. For those who weren't on the internet nonstop about 10 years ago, there's this thing where people take a picture of a cat and put bad grammar words, like sentences over top of it. It became a really popular thing. I don't know the history of it, and I don't want to get into the deep web conversation about lolcats right now, but it started basically with a picture of a cat who wanted a cheeseburger, and it says, "I can has cheeseburger," and it just completely fell apart from there. And at some point, I think in 2006 or something, somebody goes, well, let's translate the Bible into this bad grammar lolcat thing. And so I bought, it's not the entire Bible. This is really small. It's only 128 pages or something. So these are particular best moments of the lolcat Bible that are in this version.
Oh, okay. So as much as this is going to pain my soul, do you want to read a verse or two?
I've been waiting 2 weeks to tell you how excited I am that I got this Bible.
You've held it well. Oh my gosh.
It's been hard. So I could read stuff from it, but I wanted to go over some of the most important and amazing things I think about this. First off, somebody went through the trouble to do this, to write it, but it's actually online is where it mostly is. It lives as like a Wikipedia page, where everyone can go in and edit and add to the Bible, so it's actually a crowdsourced translation of the Bible, which I assume isn't something you would read in seminary,
Nope. I'm pretty sure it's a bad translation. It's a translation of an English translation, would be my guess. Go on.
Yeah, it is, probably. But something they say about translations is, you translate to the modernist crowd, right? It's what's...
Go on. Try to convince me that it's a good translation of the Bible.
Well, imagine while one nerd out there is translating the Bible into lolcats and finds something that really speaks to them. Maybe it did do something good in the world, Abby, for that one person who is trying to translate it into lolcats.
I will try to think of it that way.
Okay, if you can't think of it that way, I will give you this. There's guidelines on the website about how you translate into lolcat. There are guidelines for how you do this. And if nothing else, you can appreciate that these are some of the guidelines. Okay, so it starts out with saying that every translation of the Bible has a philosophy behind it. Some want it quite formal, others are dynamic or paraphrased, but theirs is they want to produce a translation that's understandable to cats. Cats like having fun. Keep the translation fun. I think that totally speaks to me on a deep fundamental level, Abby.
Sure.
Cats have short attention spans,
Okay, that's true.
use short sentences, and prefer references to things that cats would understand. A typical domestic cat probably hasn't seen a desert tent, but they have seen a sofa.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, so those are the fun things. And then the other thing I needed to mention was that they have, so as this meme, this like picture of the cat with the cheeseburger evolved into lots of other different pictures of cats doing other silly things, all the cats got names. So all the characters in the Bible have different names. So God is Ceiling Cat, because there was a picture of a cat poking his hand through a ceiling. So that Ceiling Cat is God. Basement Cat is Satan, because it's below. But the one I really like, the two I really like, is Jesus' Happy Cat.
Okay.
It's sweet, because Jesus has Happy Cat. That's very nice.
Yes, that is very sweet. I can give you that.
And then the Holy Spirit is Hover Cat, or Hover Kitty.
Okay.
Because it hovers.
Okay.
Yeah. And then there's some other ones, like an angel is a bird cat. And then the sheeps or rams and other sacred animals are just mices. And a blessing is a cheeseburger.
Okay. Well, while my soul is still hurting, I'm glad that you were happy.
I was really happy. I thought to myself, like, what would be the most irritating thing to Abby? And Lol's cat was it. And I got a Lol's Cat Bible. So in the beginning, Ceiling Cat mated to skies and the earths and stuff.
And it was good.
And it was good. So that's my silly thing to bring to you this week in the world of weird things going on with the Bible in this day and age. Is that good enough?
That's good enough.
Awesome.
Guess leaves us with the last question.
The last question.
The podcast.
Oh.
I think you're up, Shannon.
Oh, I am.
So, can you tell me, what is the Bible?
The Bible is definitely a glass half full.
I like it.
Nice.
Hey, this is little sister Shannon popping in with a few notes and updates. As always, we want to thank Stephen Kartenberg for the use of our intro and outro music, Ukulele's Happy Place featuring Kara Square. We have a link to more of their music on our Facebook page as well as in the info section of this episode. We are on Facebook at facebook.com/BibleSisters or on Twitter at BibleSisters. We will be back on February 14th. That's Valentine's Day. We'll be back on February 14th with a new episode. Until then, have a wonderful couple weeks and thanks for tuning in.